My father never took off his hat, except when he was going into bed and into mass. And my mother said that he slept in the two places. At that time, every man covered his head. There was respect for the brain then, a delicate instrument. As well as covering the head, the hat is a handy receptacle. If you're cut short, you can give a feed of oats to a horse out of a hat. You can collect up apples in the orchard. You can bring in new laid eggs out of the hay shed. You could nearly put a hen hatching in a hat. Well, a small hen, like a bantam or a guinea hen. Headgear gives a man authority. The popes and the kings and the bishops know this. They always cover their heads when they have something important to say. And where would the storyteller be without his hat when he sits by the fireside to tell a story? In olden days, when people would be going to the meadow saving hay, they'd take with them an earthenware jar full of lia ishke. And what was that? It was a mixture of new milk and spring water. For the new milk by itself wasn't the thing for the thirst, and of course the spring didn't have the body in it. And that earthenware jar, it would be put somewhere away from the heat of the sun, and no word of a lie, but it was a great man for the thirst. At that time, there was this farmer in the middle. A very fine day that came after a lot of rain, and he had a lot of help. So that the earthenware jar gave no battle. By 3 o'clock in the evening, the jar was empty, and the men were there, their tongues out with the drought. Now, they were in the happy position that there was a public house not too far away from them. But they couldn't afford to spend the time going there, and so much to be done. That same year, the farmer, he had a servant called John the Man. And the only thing I'll tell you now about John the Man is he was not too correct in the top story. When he should be shaking the hay, he'd be raking, and when he should be raking, he'd be barking at the dog. That class of a fella. So the farmer said he wouldn't be much out of pocket if he sent John the Man to the public house for a gallon of porter. And he gave him the empty earthenware jar and 1 4 and told him to bring a gallon of it. That's all it was at the time, 2 a pint. Oh my, weren't we all born a bit late? And John, he said, keep your hat well down on your head in case that the sun might lean in your brains. And John the Man, he took the earthenware jar and the 1 4 and fixed the hat down on his head, and he set out for the public house, delighted to be going on this errand. And he was singing a little ditty, Murphy stout is good, no doubt. It shoves the navel another bit out. And you see the Amadan, he wasn't watching where he was going, and he hit his toe against something, and he fell out in his face and eyes, made flitters of the jar. He got up with only the handle in his hand, and not even noticing that the jar was broke. He kept going until he came to the public house. And he put the 1 4 up on the counter, and he says to the publican, give me a gallon of porter. And the publican took a big white enamel jug, a gallon measure, and he bent down behind the counter. Now, don't ask me what caper they used to be going on with when the porter came in timber barrels. There'd be a pilgrimage from tap to tap. A big splash out of the flat barrel and a small spurt out of the high one to put a collar in it. And when the jug was full, he put it in the counter, and he says to John the Man, he said, where is your container for this? And it was then John noticed that he had only the handle in his hand. And he said, that's funny, he said. We were together leaving the field. That might be, says the publican, but where am I going to spill this? And that put John the Man thinking, and he threw away the handle, and he began to scratch his head, and he took off his hat to give himself more scope for thought. And he says to the publican, look, he said, couldn't you spill it in there? And the publican did. He spilled the porter into the hat. Wasn't he paid for it? And when the hat was full up to the brim, there was a nice little drop left in the bottom of the white enamel jug, and John the man thought it was a pity to have to leave it there, the precious liquid, a thing he mentioned to the public. And I know, the public said, sure, I know, but where can I put it? Your hat is full. Well, says John, he said, couldn't you put it in there? So he did. He spilled what was left of the porter into the top of the hat. And John the man, then taking the hat, between his two hands, he walked back to the meadow. And when he arrived at the meadow, the farmer and all the men that collected around him, and the farmer, when he saw the small naked porter on top of the hat, he said, John, he said, is that all the porter you brought? Oh, well, no, says John, you must think I'm a right Amadan. I've the rest of it here.